Hello, everyone, and welcome to another garden tour. This time we are touring the world famous Dr. Sun-Yat Sen Classical Chinese Garden in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. In my travels over the past several years, I've had the privilege of visiting Japanese gardens in 8 countries on 3 continents and in several U.S. states. Japanese gardens are very popular and widely dispersed across this planet. There's some 300 Japanese gardens alone in North America. But Chinese gardens, that's a little bit of an oddity. That's rare. There's only several in North America. And the Dr. Sun-Yat Sen Classical Chinese Garden in Vancouver, British Columbia, is only the second Chinese garden that I have visited. The other one was the Lansu Garden in my hometown area of Portland, Oregon, which is one of the top gardens in the United States. Now, the Vancouver Chinese Garden is unique in that it was the first classical Chinese garden built in the world outside of Asia. It was constructed in the 1980s and it is world class. It's on a par with the Portland Japanese Garden, which was built in the 1990s. They're very comparable, except this one in Vancouver is probably a little bit larger, but they are very similar. So let me give you a little tour, a little background information about the Dr. Sun-Yat Sen Classical Chinese Garden. And I'm going to be reading from the brochure that they hand out when you pay to go into the garden. I think you will find this information interesting. Chinese gardens are a little bit different than Japanese gardens, and this information that I'm about to read to you kind of explains what is unique about the Chinese garden. What is a classical Chinese garden? Since the Shang Dynasty, 1600 to 1046 BC, Chinese emperors have built large enclosed gardens designed to provide them with access to nature without the need for arduous journeys to remote places. Like many of us today, Chinese citizens have, for centuries, lived urban lives that provide little access to nature. In an effort to compensate for their day-to-day distance from the natural world, those who could afford to took inspiration from the imperial gardens, borrowing natural forms and building them into their garden homes. These green spaces became increasingly popular, and by the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644 AD, the highly specialized art of building a garden home where one could relax and be close to nature was common practice for the upper class. By creating varied landscapes in a limited area, classical Chinese gardens became a multi-dimensional painting in time and space, while at the same time being a family residence in which a large and busy household would live out its daily life. These garden homes are also living, breathing ecosystems that support a variety of plant and animal life. To enter a classical Chinese garden is to gain admission into an idealized world of the imagination that reveals itself step by step and evokes aspects of the wild, craggy rocks, ponds, twisting paths, and picturesque trees. Dr. Sun-Yat Sen Classical Chinese Garden is the first full-scale classical Chinese garden to have been constructed outside of China. Inspired by garden homes from the Ming Dynasty, the garden is an oasis within the bustling city of Vancouver. As the first classical Chinese garden built outside of China, Dr. Sun-Yat Sen Classical Chinese Garden was modeled after famous garden homes from the southern city of Suzhou. Built mostly by scholar officials from the Ming Dynasty, these beautiful garden homes were granted UNESCO World Heritage status in the late 1990s. China's scholar officials were the men who held highly respected civil service positions in the government, and starting in the Tang Dynasty, 618 to 906 AD, these literati bureaucrats ran the country. Unlike many other societies around the world at that time, where the way to achieve high social position was by birth alone, commoners, even peasants, could become members of China's ruling elite. They achieved their success in highly competitive exams that required years of preparation. The official exams took place every 3 years in the provincial capitals and lasted about 20 days. Success in these exams meant that they could be posted to one of the lower levels of the 9-rank official hierarchy and could qualify to sit for the prestigious exam in the imperial capital in front of the emperor. The top-ranking candidates could be posted automatically to the highest posts in the empire and had the right to be called the jinshi, or presented scholar. The lives of officials were often filled with stress, so a scholar's garden home gave him a space to enjoy nature, compose poetry, paint, practice the art of penjing, or that's what the Japanese call bonsai, supervise his sons' studies for the exams, and eventually retire. So the Vancouver Classical Chinese Garden, like the Lansu Chinese Garden in Portland, Oregon, is a classical garden that was built for scholar civil servants around their private residences. And one of the features that I really enjoyed about this Chinese garden was that it was in two parts. One part is open to the public without cost, and you can literally walk around the pond and follow the trails and go in many parts of the garden that are open and free to the public. And there is also a private part that you have to pay a very small fee. It was about $15 or so, and it lets you into the actual area where the literati scholar would have lived, and the courtyards that you're viewing right now and the walkways around the buildings. That's the part that is open to those who are buy a ticket. So this garden is open to anybody and everybody, one way or the other, which is really a nice feature. Another unique feature about the Chinese garden that I find interesting, and also the one in Portland is similarly arranged, is that unlike the Japanese gardens, which are more of a strolling gardens, there are several types of Japanese gardens, but they get you out of the house and out of the residence, and you're strolling around nature. These gardens are incorporated in courtyards, multiple courtyards, and there are open areas like the pond in the middle that you're looking at right now. But around the perimeter, there are many hallways, corridors, verandas, patios, and private places where one can go and study, read, meditate, and the house is often built around these viewing areas, and there are doorways like what we are going through right now that open up into vistas and panoramas and into other courtyards. So it's a very complex and very highly designed garden setting. Now, like the Japanese gardens, the basic features of a Chinese garden also include rocks, water, pine trees, and other trees. These are the foundational elements or the backbone of this kind of a garden. But unlike the Japanese garden, there is less running water, less streams, more ponds and reflection pools. The Japanese gardens have that, but they have more waterfalls and streams and running water to replicate nature. This type of garden is more of a stylized garden, but it still replicates nature, even as does the Japanese garden. So let's give credit where credit is due. The Japanese gardens, with which most of us are familiar, did not spontaneously combust, but they originated from Chinese influences back 1,300 years ago at least, And this was thanks to Chinese influences through the Buddhist monks, the Zen Buddhist monks, and also trade that went on between China and Japan. And so the Japanese and Chinese gardens have a lot in similarity. Yet the Japanese have stylized it and created their own style, which I would say replicates nature a little bit more closely, because the Japanese have near them the coastlines and the mountains and the alpine areas, which many Japanese gardens stylistically represent or try to replicate. And like the Japanese gardens that I have visited, this Chinese garden is very heavily and highly manicured, and a lot of work goes into keeping this up, and it shows. It is worth it. One can easily spend an hour or two wandering around, enjoying, absorbing this really beautiful garden. Immerse yourself in it, and I hope these videos that I am taking give you kind of a little sense, a little taste of the unique qualities of this garden. So now I will be quiet and let you enjoy the rest of this video without my narrative.